supreme suspense as the country waits for blockbuster decisions from the highest court in the land. The justices issuing 4 rulings today, but we're still waiting on the 3 highly consequential ones that we have been talking about for weeks now. Former President Trump's claim that he has immunity from prosecution for actions he took as president. The case concerning whether January 6 defendants can be charged with obstruction of a proceeding under that specific law. And third, emergency room abortions. Let's get right to CNN Supreme Court analyst Joan Biskupic. And Joan, all of these huge decisions could come down within the next 2 weeks. Take us inside the court as this anticipation mounts.
Sure. Your phrase, supreme suspense, was exactly right. And, you know, in addition to those big 3 that you mentioned, they also have a major case on Second Amendment gun rights. They have cases on social media regulation by governments. They have environmental protection cases, federal regulatory disputes. So a lot of major questions that are, have been lingering for years that have come to culmination this term. So you go in, Jake, at 10 o'clock Eastern time, and the 9 justices, usually there are 9, today Justice Alito wasn't on the bench, the 9 do sit, and the chief says to whoever's going to read the majority opinions for the day, has them speak. But as you know, this is the season of dissents from the bench also, because we have so many big cases out there that, a lot is at stake. And this is the time of year when a justice who's dissenting wants to call more attention to his or her protest and will speak from the bench. We had that last week in the bump stocks ruling when Justice Sotomayor protested the majority's decision to invalidate a federal regulation that prohibited bump stocks as machine guns. And, there is just a lot of anticipation in the room. Sometimes relatives and friends of the justices come. Often a spouse will show up. Today, Justice Kavanaugh's parents were there. So, it's just everyone in anticipation. And we do not know which cases are going to come when until we get to the very last day, which this year, Jake, should be potentially a week from next Friday or Monday, July 1st.
And the immunity decision, just a huge one, and obviously will have a significant impact on the presidential race. And the timing of this decision can't be ignored.
It can't, Jake. And I just want to remind everyone that the justices had an opportunity to take up Jack Smith's request to examine presidential immunity back in December. Special counsel Jack Smith, representing the Department of Justice, the American people, had asked the Supreme Court to actually look then at former President Trump's claim that he should be shielded from criminal prosecution for the events after the 2020 election. And the justices said no. They decided to wait until oral arguments on April 25th. That's when they heard it. We obviously saw them struggling with some pretty important questions, but now they've already, delayed many more weeks, that if we get the ruling tomorrow or next week, we are right up against the November election in terms of a possible trial for former President Trump, because, I think just the preparation for any kind of trial is going to take about 3 months, if not more, Jake. So no matter how they rule, I think the window of opportunity for any kind of prosecution on behalf of the Department of Justice might be dwindling, Jake.
It's worth noting, of course, that next week marks 2 years since the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision, which overturned Roe v. Wade. And as the White House prepares to mark that day, they're also bracing for this emergency room abortion ruling.
That's right. And, just think of how much has changed in America since the justices struck down nearly 50 years of constitutional abortion rights. Some 14 states have completely banned abortion. Several other states have imposed very strict restrictions on people's women's ability to end a pregnancy. And we've now even seen debates over in vitro fertilization. All sorts of reproductive rights are now really in doubt because of that decision. And I think, Jake, no matter how the justices rule on that federal law that's intended to ensure emergency room treatment, and whether that even applies for potential abortions for a mother's health in emergency situations in states like Idaho that ban abortion, that will not be the last word on litigation coming from that 2022 decision to completely eliminate constitutional abortion rights. Jake.
All right, CNN's Joan Biskupic, thanks so much. Let's discuss this all with our legal panel. I have with me Elie Honig, Tom Dupree, and Brandy Hardin. Elie, if the presidential immunity decision ends up being last on the docket, so she said July something,
Right.
July 2nd or something. What might the impact be on a potential trial? Do you think that's it? No trial until after the election, and obviously if Trump wins, he'll get rid of it?
I think there's still a chance to get this trial in. As Joan said, the window is very quickly closing. Every day that passes, of course, makes a trial less likely before the election, but we're really talking about sort of small change at this point. I mean, whether the decision comes down tomorrow or comes down 10 days from now doesn't make that big a difference. Here's what to watch, though. When the Supreme Court rules, I think what they're going to do is say, here's the test. First time we're ever announcing this. Here's the test for presidential immunity. If the court says, here's the test, and Trump fails, then it goes back to the trial court, and then I think they can squeeze in a trial before the election if they want. But if the court says, here's the new test, and now back to the trial court, you have to decide whether Trump meets that test or not, then we're going back up the appeals chain, and then there's no trial.
Don't you think that's the second option is what they're going to do?
I think the Supreme Court is going to basically take a middle position between the two somewhat extreme positions the parties have said. Jack Smith says there's basically no immunity. The Trump team says it's absolute immunity. Supreme Court's going to come down in the middle. I don't think they are going to get into the facts of this case and apply their newly stated constitutional standard to Trump in this case. We saw from the argument that they are operating at a 30,000-foot level. They are thinking grand questions of constitutional law. They're not going down to this kind of granular, get your hands dirty question of, well, what the stuff Trump did falls on the official side or on the private side. I think they're going to announce high-arching legal principles and then leave it to the lower courts to sort it all out.
So, Brandy, in oral arguments on April 25th, Chief Justice of the United States John Roberts said, quote, as I read it, it says simply a former president can be prosecuted because he's being prosecuted. Why shouldn't we either send it back to the Court of Appeals or issue an opinion making clear that that's not the law? Translate that into English for us, and how do you think that foretells what actually is going to happen?
So I really just think they're saying, look, if a president's being prosecuted, he can be prosecuted. There is that. That's obviously something that's true. But what I really think here is that, just like everyone said, they are not going to make a decision. There's going to be new law that they come out with respect to immunity, and they're just going to send it back to the courts. That's what's really going to happen. And let me say this, as a defense attorney, I think there is no chance, no possibility of a trial before the election. If I'm now starting anew, I have this file, I've been working on it, there is literally no possibility that I can get through everything and be prepared for a trial no matter how many people are on the team in order to be ready before the election. So I think once again, he's going to escape and there are not going to be any more trials before the election.
Ellie, you have an article coming out in tomorrow in New York Magazine on the scenario posed by a D.C. Court of Appeals judge, which asked, quote, could a president who ordered SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival and who was not impeached, would he be subject to criminal prosecution? The argument being from the Trump lawyers at that time during that argument that you have to be impeached before you can be prosecuted, impeached and convicted, I think.
Right.
You argue it's way oversimplified. Tell us what you mean.
I think that moment was the most memorable moment from all the Trump arguments, right? Who could forget it? The answer that Donald Trump's lawyers gave was outrageous, wrong, reckless, and dangerous. The problem is you have to go beyond that. I am convinced the Supreme Court is going to reject this theory that anyone can only ever be indicted, a president, if he's first been impeached and then removed. That will never happen. The court's going to say, no, that's ridiculous. But we can't end there, because then the court's going to have to say, well, here's what the standard is. And that's where I think we get into what we've been talking about. So it's not as easy as just saying, of course you can't kill a political rival. Of course they're going to reject this. What's taking so long? What's taking so long is they're trying to articulate the standard for the first time in American history, and then they're going to have that applied through the trial court. So it's much more complicated.
What do you think the standard's going to be?
I suspect this court will try to draw some sort of line between official conduct and private conduct.
Well, does supervising elections count as official conduct?
Well, I mean, I think Jack Smith would have a pretty strong argument to say that the president doesn't really have any formal constitutional role in the election process. That's something that our framers basically delegated to the states, state legislatures, and the like, not the president of the United States. So I think under that test, I think President Trump would have a difficult time trying to get out and claim immunity for that type of conduct. The other thing I want to say is, with regard to Chief Justice Roberts' quote, I think that actually is fairly significant because, as we all know, the chief sits right in the middle of the court, and what he says from the bench—
You mean physically and
is telling.
philosophically?
Well, both physically and philosophically, exactly. And so when he questions, I interpreted what he said as basically questioning the D.C. Circuit, the lower court's rationale, where they rejected any sort of immunity, and the chief basically found that reasoning to be circular. So what that tells me is that it is exceedingly likely that the Supreme Court is going to reverse what the lower court said and recognize some sort of immunity, the scope yet to be determined.